The release of Star Wars Outlaws was like a fart at a funeral. It happened, it got a couple judgmental looks, but no one really brought it up. It's probably the least talked about game of 2024 that got a nomination at the Game Awards. So, within mere seconds of this video starting, I've already brought its existence into question. Why on earth am I making this video? Well, it's pretty simple. Just like everybody else on the planet who isn't lying, I love Star Wars, probably a little too much. I'm not a freak, but I'll play pretty much any of the games. You could be selling a flash drive with malware on it, and as long as it has that Star Wars label, I'll buy it off of you. So with all that being said, and with the question of whether or not this game is as bad as everyone says, let's get into the spoiler review of Star Wars Outlaws. There is one more reason why I wanted to play this game though, and that's who created it. This game was clearly made by people who love Star Wars, but there's an entity behind them pulling all the strings made completely of pure evil. Ubisoft and I have a narrative impotence, a game this rotten, one of the worst designs I have ever seen, a nasty waste of money. Real fucking tasteful, Ubisoft. If anyone should cover this topic, it's you. Comparable to Rugburn. Troubled history. I hate them. It's the worst company, period. I would bring back whaling and animal poaching if it meant the downfall of this company. And I just had to see how they bastardized this franchise that I love so much. And you know what? It's not that bad. As a Star Wars game, it could definitely be better, but it could also be a whole lot worse. There are stupid screen wipes like the movies, you get to use the stun on your blaster that showed up only one time 48 years ago. You see plenty of glup shittos like Salacious B. Crumb, and just like the real Star Wars, I get ripped out of the immersion by notifications telling me I earned Ubisoft reward points. This game is clearly made by fans, but that's not enough. I'm a fan, but I could never write a good Star Wars movie, and the developers of this game are big enough fans to replicate Star Wars, but not in a meaningful way or in a way that makes anything new. It feels like they're just checking off boxes. Oh, we gotta have a droid sidekick and a rundown gray smuggling ship. We gotta somehow involve the rebellion in the Empire. You negotiate and make a deal with Tusken Raiders to free one of their captives, but anyone who's seen the Tusken Raiders in anything knows how feral these people are, especially to strangers. You sneak into Jabba's palace to get your freaky dog thing back and end up running into him and Han Solo frozen in carbonite, after which you fight the Rancor. And all of this happens in a mission that is completely shoehorned into this game and is so unimpactful to the story that it would be exactly the same if it weren't there. Just like the Sand People, Jabba's and Han's appearances are purely there to be cameos. What sucks about the Rancor fight too is that it cheapens Luke killing it in Return of the Jedi, because what felt like insurmountable odds to a Jedi are now doable for a smuggler and a bounty hunter. The set piece that sticks in my mind the most, though, is when Kay Vess is climbing around a High Republic cruiser, and it's for two reasons. One of them being that replication we're talking about. I was climbing inside this giant ship from the Jedi Council's heyday, and I realized I felt nothing. Why did I feel nothing? This is supposed to be a standout moment for the game, one of the craziest and most special parts of this game. Why does this feel so boring? And I looked around and realized, I'm in a High Republic cruiser? Why doesn't this look like it's from a High Republic era? That time in the Star Wars universe is so colorful, filled with bright white and gold and purple. This is gray mush that I've already seen 1,000 times in this game. This time capsule from a brighter age of utopia looks exactly like the bland and gray Imperial bases at the height of fascism. It's not enough to just call it High Republic, you have to make it that way. The creators of this game know what in Star Wars is cool, but not what makes it cool. The other reason this set piece stood out to me was that it made me realize what this game is. Most people would call this game Ubisoft's attempt at a Star Wars game, and that is true, but that camera pan made me think, wait a minute, a thieving, rogue, asshole main character who climbs around with a grappling hook looking for valuables? This is just Ubisoft's Uncharted. They even ripped off the ending. Vale turning on Sliro is just Nadine turning on Rafe at the end of 4. But I guess if you're gonna rip off any game, it may as well be Uncharted, man. These games are fucking great. They do have great characters and stories, but right now let's get into the gameplay and see how it compares, because you better come loaded if you're coming up against Uncharted. These games are nuts. Running through a burning building, fighting and trying to escape as it crumbles around you, climbing up a train hanging off the side of a cliff, climbing up a collapsing tower, fighting a private militia through pirate ships, hanging out the back of a crashing cargo plane, shooting at a... Oh my gosh! I'm sword fighting in a burning pirate ship for lost gold, swinging around this building and crashing in through the window, fighting my way out of this prison, and in one of the best environments I've ever seen, I'm walking through what remains of a hidden pirate utopia. Holy shit. Let's see what's going on over there with Star Wars. That's pretty cool. What really irritates me about this game, though, isn't how it's ripping off Uncharted, it's just that it's doing such a bad job of it. They took my favorite part of my favorite Uncharted game and just completely butchered it. Climbing isn't fun when you have to wait for a fucking button prompt. It makes it feel so passive. They do have some neat puzzles, but climbing across fans that turn on and off isn't fun enough to be 30% of the gameplay. Jumping across these platforms is torture when it's so imprecise that you could easily under or overshoot and have to climb all the way back up. It's like the climbing equivalent of Ubisoft's patented trailing missions where the person you're following is too fast for your walk speed but too slow for your run speed, which are also in this game. And it's the little things like that that add up and just chip away at you. Using Nyx to pick things up and set things off is cool, but he's so slow that it's just faster if I do it myself. The controls to reverse on the speeder are flips compared to every other video game on the planet with vehicles, and you can't change it. The pitch and yaw are on the wrong sticks when you fly the ship, and you can't change it. And as a result of that, taking down the Star Destroyer at the climax of the game isn't nearly as fun as it was in 2005. I had a buttload of credits at the end of the game, but I never actually cared about them or felt like I needed them. It's cool to infiltrate Imperial bases, but you do it so often that when you do it at the end and it's supposed to be a big deal, it's completely watered down. The only real compliments I can give this gameplay is that the stealth and gunplay are serviceable. The Syndicate system is essentially what I wanted from Cyberpunk's street cred system, despite how disconnected it is to the plot. This game actually did manage to do something that very few games have done, and that is fuel my gambling addiction. I fucking love Sabacc. It's like a combination of blackjack and poker, and I cannot believe they managed to take a stupid fictional game and make it actually substantive. The best part of it too is you get to sit next to aliens while you play and just constantly hear in your ear, That being said, the gameplay has absolutely no synergy with the open world though either. Your allegiances do dictate whether or not you're allowed in certain areas, but there's always a way to sneak inside and you can have all the allegiances high at the same time. I started a mission where I got info on a woman who could rig my speeder, and I had to drive a kilometer out to find people who knew where she was. Then I drove all the way out to find her, and she wanted me to drive another 1.2 kilometers out to find a part for her, and then drive all the way back just for one mission where all I got was the ability to boost. And not only did Ubisoft manage to make a Western setting on Tatooine lame as shit, but the sheriff says, "You after this bounty too?" As if she didn't see Kay Vess's face on a bounty poster, plastered not only around her town, but her fucking office. The open worlds just suck in general, man. There's so much empty space that's only there for you to ride from one place to another, with no good music or random encounters to keep you busy. There's no minimap or waypoints to guide you down these jumbled up and convoluted roads. And I do not know why Star Wars Outlaws is the game where Ubisoft decided to not include hunting. How on earth do you, as a company known for forcing in hunting mechanics where they're not welcome, not include any in a game based on an IP chock full of crazy and wild creatures? On the plus side though, there are no hunting mechanics. One of my least favorite parts of the open world too is how you start off in Canto Bight and I was like, oh wow, this is a pretty good idea. And then you leave and you never go back there again until the very end and I was like, okay, never mind. But the interiors of populated spaceports do provide what I was excited about Canto Bight for, and that's the opportunities. They just dropped me into a cantina and I was able to eavesdrop on other people talking about their scores and I got to take them for myself. Just finding little R3 prompts can lead to entire new side quests like sneaking into a rival crime syndicate's vault. These hubs can be labyrinths and impossible to navigate without opening the map every 15 seconds, but there are individual fast travel points in each interior that significantly help. While the seamless planet traversal is probably the only pro for the actual open world, roaming through bustling cantinas and betting parlors to take advantage of the underground crime activity around is something I never knew I wanted, and that I can only get in Star Wars Outlaws. This game is a mixed bag on the technical side of things as well. For every stellar looking cutscene, there's an in-engine cinematic where the hair gets fucked up. The sound design in particular is flawed, which sticks out like a sore thumb in a Star Wars project. For example, let's listen to what the thermal detonator sounds like in Star Wars Battlefront from 2015. Now, if listening to that noise made you feel things you're ashamed to admit, big whoop, so did everyone else. You cannot top Star Wars sound design. Now, for comparison, let's listen to what a grenade sounds like in Star Wars Outlaws. I'm just as impressed as you are. Now, to be fair, the speeder sound effects are superb and sound exactly like they should, but on the other hand, every character's voice sounds like they're being put through the Star Wars helmet filter no matter the circumstances. The lip syncing looks automated during in-game cinematics and are consistently off. The animations during gameplay look generic like they came out of a metal can, and they slip up very often. These wind effects look like they came out of the Unity store. These punches have no weight behind them because the audio isn't delivering any impact. And it's just so annoying that they put all their focus and attention on making several giant open worlds that ended up being super mediocre, instead of shifting their attention to making this game actually function. It never crashed on me or anything, but I'd rather have a game run flawlessly and crash once or twice, instead of a game that won't let me climb a ladder, or keeps enemies in alert status after they've called off their search, or gets me killed because it can't register that I want to jump on this box, which, by the way, is what you're supposed to do to progress the mission. Or, you know what? How about a game that doesn't just spawn a bunch of soldiers running a marathon out in the middle of nowhere? Where this game truly struggles, though, is in its characters and story, the former especially, because they all suck except for one. I like Kay Vess as a character. She isn't particularly the most unique character I've ever seen, but aside from her good writing and good voice acting, she is defaultly my favorite character in this game because she is the only one that I like. And what's especially annoying is that the story is clearly pushing her in one direction that not only do I despise, but she despises too, and they still make it happen. I swear, Kay Vess is the only character in this game with a head on her shoulders. You can see it in the side characters, like, what are these guys' names?
Waka. My name's Waka.
Are you Sliro?
Right. CeeLo Green here has Kay sneak into an Imperial base for a part that's way more advanced than what her speeder needs, basically doing what AutoZone does to me every time, and Waka Flocka Flame decides to betray her after she steals a part for their ship, but doesn't wait for her to come back with the part. No, he follows her into the danger and pulls his gun on her as soon as she steals it. But it's even worse in the main story. Her father figure that she lives with actively keeps information on a heist from her so she won't do it because he sees it as too risky and dangerous. Then, once a bunch of other criminals come in and shoot him in the fucking leg because Kay stole from them, he says, yeah, you know what? Here's the details on that heist. Go ahead and go out and steal some more. What the fuck? Then we find out the only other authority figure in her life, her mother, was a street rat thief who raised her daughter to not only follow in her footsteps, but enjoy it. Bitch, this isn't Aladdin, you're a horrible person. Also, during the first big heist on Canto Bight that kicks off the plot, she gets double-crossed by the rebels, and it turns out that the whole heist wasn't actually for millions of credits, but just some guy named Asura. Then the guy who coerced Kay into doing the same heist she already did forces her into working with the guy who got her a death mark in the first place, and her thieving mom who walked out on her when she was a kid. And Kay, like me, said fuck all of these people. This is the worst possible outcome. She's the only person in this game with a half-decent brain in their skull. But then they just keep pushing her. Asura wins her over by saying, hey, work with the rebellion. And she's like, no, fuck you. And then he's like, oh, my sister died a while ago. And I'm like, fuck you and your dead sister. You're the reason I'm wanted in the first place. But then Kay is like, you know what? Fine, you and your ugly tentacles can work with me on the heist. Do you realize how bad your character writing has to be for me to hate the rebels? The people fighting Space Hitler? It's so annoying to see Kay be a rational character for most of the game and then throw it all out the window at the end. It's in the name. This game is about the outlaw side of the Star Wars universe. It would have been nice to see a more gray and immoral protagonist, especially after watching The Penguin. At least she let her mom rot in a cell at the end. But you remember when mere seconds ago I said Kay was rational? That was a lie. She's rational about 70% of the time, which, to be fair, is a record-breaking statistic for Ubisoft. But with that 30%, it's like they forgot who they're writing for. Now, what I'm about to say is the worst phrase ever invented, and I hate everyone who uses it, but I have to say it here because it is part of the 1% of times it's applicable. This game suffers from ludonarrative dissonance. Now, don't get it twisted. What that is when a character's emotions and actions don't line up in the gameplay. Not at all like Nathan Drake being fine in both gameplay and cutscenes with killing mercenaries hired to murder him on sight, but very much like Kay Vess spending the entire game murdering other criminals and Imperials, but being completely shaken when seeing someone she met a half hour ago get executed. And it's not even just strictly a difference in gameplay and cutscenes. They can't even be consistent when it's just cutscenes. Watch this. She just fed this guy to wild animals, but oh no, seeing the tyrannical queen die is just too much for little old Kay Vess. And the whole ending sequence happens just because the bad guy owns a droid with no charisma or sense of humor or any attractive quality at all, and to that I say, so what? Luke owns C-3PO and R2-D2, who cares who owns ND5? And the story is just, ugh. This is one of the most overblown, least sensical, and needlessly complicated plots I have ever seen. This whole game starts because Kay essentially stole a rich guy's vintage Cadillac. And that rich guy is, for the most part at least, the villain of the game, and delivers a whole speech about his past to a bunch of people he kills anyway. You may be asking, why did he do that? Is he crazy? Is he like the Joker or something interesting where he just has a flair for drama and it was all for fun? That's a good theory, but the answer is, he did it to pique the audience's interest so that they play past 2 hours and lose the ability to refund the game on Steam. Nothing makes sense. Some fish lady hires you to sneak into a base to grab something for the Hutt Syndicate, and once you grab it, she walks in and tells you to double-cross the Hutts for the Crimson Dawn. First off, why the fuck did you hire me if you can just waltz right in? Why didn't you just steal it yourself? And why didn't you just cut out the middleman? Either don't hire me or just wait for me to give it to you and then double cross the Hutts. Don't fucking tell me about it. Don't leave a witness. Don't create a witness in the first place. I swear this game has missing cutscenes. During Kay's escape, in one cutscene, she learns to fly, enters into space, and lightspeed jumps to the planet Tashara. Then in the next cutscene, all of a sudden, the ship's on fire, sparks are flying, and you're making an emergency crash landing. What happened there in the middle? Why wasn't there a cutscene showing what happened there, but there's this empty space in the game where you go to the Tatooine spaceport, sit down and wait for a guy, and then go and find him at a cantina when he doesn't show up? Why waste my time instead of just having me go to the cantina in the first place? This game is supposed to be about crime syndicates, and they stray away from that in 2 different ways. The actual syndicates you interact with in the gameplay have virtually nothing to do with the story. All that happens is occasionally Is that Amelia Clark? Anyways, all that happens is occasionally you'll meet with one of the leaders, but it's usually for some shoehorned reason, like I talked about with Jabba, and at the very end, whichever faction you have the highest reputation with will come help you take down the Star Destroyer. And the other way they stray away from that story about crime syndicates is by falling into the exact same conflict almost every other Star Wars story is about: the Rebels and the Empire. Turns out the villain Sliro and his crime syndicate Zarek Besh are actually a front for the Empire's intelligence agency, in which Sliro is an officer set up so they can give Darth Vader information on rebels. You heard that right. This complete story pivot is only there so that the most popular and marketable Star Wars character can make a cameo in a game he doesn't fit in. Now, granted, it is a tough scene, but still, it wasn't worth completely derailing the story for. Even this stupid plot twist where the most predictable twist villain is actually a twist villain doesn't hinge on the Empire. He's actually Slirio's brother, which I didn't expect and I actually like as it ties into the beginning, but he's made an agreement with Vader to replace his brother as the head of Zarek Besh. It makes sense, like Jalen says, he owes him an empire and he's come to take his. But it would work even better if they didn't force this stupid ISB twist, as Jalen only has his empire as long as he delivers info on rebels to Vader. It would be better for the plot and better for Jalen in-universe if the empire wasn't there breathing down his neck. At its core, Star Wars Outlaws is a game that cannot commit to anything. It can't commit to a morally gray protagonist, it can't commit to being a story about crime or the syndicate system having any narrative impact at all. It can't even fully commit to ripping off Uncharted, something that irritates me so much that, fuck it, I'm reviewing Uncharted. I'm giving Star Wars Outlaws a 5 out of 10 because it is completely impressionless on me. I don't even feel like I've had an experience with this game, negative or positive, since it does important things right in the worst ways possible. Usually, I'm very passionate about video games and my opinions on them, but with this game, you could tell me it's great, you could tell me it's horrible, and I just would not care. Rarely was it ever so bad that it ruined my mood or so good that it improved it. It mostly amplified the mood I was already in. So with all that being said, this is probably the best game Ubisoft has ever made.